Alright guys, so rather than trying to explain my runes and my mastery choices for the jungle right before all my games, I've decided to just do a, um, a big video to explain all my choices and why I pick what I pick and who I use it on. So as you can see from my page, my three most played champions are Chogath, Xin Zhao, and Aurelia. I would disregard the Aurelia because I played Aurelia top lane mostly to get to Platinum because that was admittedly the easiest way for me to carry. Anyways, let me show you some stats real quick. Cho'Gath, Xin Zhao, Lee Sin, Maokai, Jarvan, Shen, Nocturne. These are all junglers that I play rather frequently. And I'll start with runes. Runes are simpler. Okay. The first 12 pages, I believe. The first 11 pages I have are all jungle pages. You can tell which one of my pages is a jungle page because I started off with JNG, which is I'm just using it as I'm using that to replace the word jungle, obviously. So I'll start off from left to right, and I'll explain who I use it on and why I pick the runes that are on the page. This first page is my jungle movement speed and attack speed page. As you can see, it has scaling, magic resist, movement speed quints, attack speed reds, and armor yellows. All my pages should have, at least 90% of them have armor yellows, just because they're the most valuable stat in the jungle. So I'm not going to really go any more in depth other than to say that about armor seals. Attack speed I run because most tanks have I wouldn't say very slow attack speeds, but most tanks have CC, they have health, they have resists. What they could use is attack speed to help them clear, because if you really think about it, a lot of tanks, such as Amumu, I guess you could say Cho'Gath and Maokai, they have the potential to run out of mana pretty quickly. So any way you can conserve mana is really helpful, and attack speed is definitely one of the ways you can help conserve mana. I typically run this page on Maokai, Cho'Gath, and Skarner. But if I had to pick, one champion this page would be perfect for, it's Skarner. Skarner needs movement speed to get into ultimate people, and the attack speed doubles as CDR for Skarner. On Maokai, I use this to get the jump on people with Twisted Advance. And on Cho'Gath, I believe Cho'Gath is probably one of the most versatile junglers in the game. You can take about any runes or masteries on him and perform well. Next page. This is my armor pen and attack speed page. I use this page on Xin Zhao, Nocturne, and Jarvan, I believe. I take 10 armor penetration because most jungle camps have about 10 armor. I want to say the small wolves, small wraiths, even potentially big wraith and big wolf have about 10 armor. So all your auto attacks are going to be doing true damage, which is really good. And the reason I take attack speed is for Madrids, because on these junglers I build Madrid's Razor, so I can get more Madrid's procs while I'm doing true damage early on. And if I had to pick the jungler that I most use this page for, it would be Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao already has armor penetration from his passive, but the attack speed I feel is extremely good on Xin Zhao early, because it helps you pull off that third Talon strike, that third 3 Talon strike to knock people up in the air. And the armor penetration from this, along with his passive, is just ridiculous for his early game damage output. Which is why if you ever get ganked by Xin Zhao and you get hit, or not even ganked, even if you're in lane with Xin Zhao, getting hit by those first 3 Qs is detrimental to your health bar. I don't care who you are, it's going to chunk you. Next page. This is my AD plus armor penetration. I use this on Jarvan, and I use this on Lee Sin. Jarvan, I'm kind of torn between Jarvan. I'll use this page sometimes, and I'll use the previous page sometimes. It really depends on how I'm feeling, because you can go Q max on Jarvan, or you can go E max on Jarvan. If you're gonna max your attack speed, take this page. If you're gonna max your armor pen, take the attack speed page. The reason I take this on Lee Sin is because Lee Sin scales really well with physical damage, and armor penetration, like I said, 10 is the magic number. As well as Lee Sin doesn't need attack speed at all. You can itemize without attack speed and he'll do perfectly fine because of his passive flurry. You get 40% attack speed for 2 auto attacks upon using a skill. So I believe this is the optimal page for Lee Sin skirmishing, pre-6. You could swap out magic resist per level for flat magic resist if you wanted to do that. But like I said, this is my preferred Lee Sin page. This is my AD and attack speed page. I keep it more as an option. I don't really use it as much. I can use it on Jarvan, I can use it on Xin Zhao, I can use it on Nocturne, but like I said, this isn't one of my primary pages. I just have it open. Next page is armor page. I have a page that actually has 25 armor. Yes. Why do I have a page? I've used it on Malphite, I've used it on Taric before he got his armor ratio nerfed, and I've used it on Mundo so that I don't lose as much health in the jungle, and I've also used it on Sejuani. So my criteria for using this page is if you're using a jungler that can't afford to get chunked early, such as Sejuani or possibly even Nautilus, and if you're using a jungler that scales very well with armor, like Malphite and Taric. You could also run this page if you were facing, an AD heavy comp with maybe a few assassins, such as a Zed or a Kha'Zix. But this is a very niche page. This is a page I've been experimenting with that I haven't really, I don't want to, I guess, spread it out, but it's a page I've liked. With the nerfs to Solari and Aegis, not Aegis, Solari and Bulwark, both of them lost about 100 health each. I've begun running this page a little bit more. What it does is it takes the armor seals and replaces them with scaling health seals. If you notice, I get 175 health from these seals at level 18. That is insanely good. If you're wondering if I'm losing any armor, no. These quints, the greater quintessences of armor, here I'll swap back. You get 13 armor from a full set of seals, but you also get 13 armor from a full set of quints, so I'm not losing a thing. Well, maybe you're asking, well, hey, why didn't you use scaling health quints instead? Because scaling health quints are not as good as scaling health seals, and that's just the only argument. Again, on this page, I run attack speed because this is something I would run on tanks. I would not recommend using this page on somebody like a Nocturne or a Xin Zhao because you're not... The attack speed is really the only offensive stat you're getting from this. You don't necessarily need health on them. You need a little bit more damage. Let me finish up. This is my hybrid AD page. The first 6 pages are more my standard stuff. That's what I'm most likely to pick. This page right here is my hybrid page. I have used this on Nasus. I have used this on I think I've used this mostly on Nasus. Just junglers that benefit from double penetration. It's got the hybrid pen marks and AD quints. Just think about junglers that could really benefit from both. Jax is one, definitely. Nasus is another. Skarner could make use out of it. Hecarim could make use out of it. It's another niche page. Basically whatever, in case I've ever wanted to pick it. This is a different page. This is what I would run on, say, I swap out the AD quints for AP, and this is what I would run on someone like Diana. I would also run this on... I'm trying to think. Diana... Who's another... I could potentially see this being run on Zac. I don't really know who else. Like I said, I like to keep my options available. This is my Fiddlesticks page. This is what I use to help me survive the early jungle and kind of, scale into that mid game a little better, give some strong potential 1v1. I run flat magic resist on this page. Usually I run scaling magic resist on most of my pages. The only reason I run flat on this page is because Fiddlesticks is really, really squishy, and I really, really don't want to get destroyed in the early jungle, especially if I'm ganking middle, because Fiddlesticks is a caster by Riot's, um, the way Riot treats him, he's a caster. And if you've noticed, most mid lane champions don't have scaling magic resist, or they have little, if any, magic resist. I believe Fiddlesticks is one of those champions, which is why I run the flats early. You could always build, you could build your Zonias, you can build your Spirit Visage, um, what is that item called? Abyssal Scepter. Yeah. Next page. This is my AP and MR per level page. It's basically the same page, but with magic resist per level. Like I said, I like having options. And this is my second, quote unquote, I guess, experimental / private page that I'm sharing with you guys. The first being that health page. This is my jungle CDR page. This is my primary page that I run on Trundle and I run on Chogath. Why? Because if you look at this, I'm running 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 8 CDR glyphs. Since they got buffed, they give 0.83% cooldown reduction, which means with 8 you get at least 6% CDR. And if you go to the Masteries, you can have 4% mastery or 4% CDR from the offense tree if you put in 4 points. So you start the game with 10% CDR, which is amazing, especially on somebody like Chogath, who has really high cooldowns on his Rupture and his Feral Scream. Or if you're running a poke comp maybe with Trundle, it's really good for getting that pillar out, keeping it out, keeping the presence to separate, to slow, to prevent engages, to start engages. It's a really good utility page for somebody um, who doesn't require an offensive stat from their runes. My last glyph that I run is magic resist per level. Now, if you notice, I did a little something weird here. Since I was removing the magic resist per level from here, I instead put flat magic resist here. Now, why I did this is because the quints are equal to flat magic resist glyphs, whereas scaling quints of magic resist are not equal to scaling glyphs of magic resist, if you're following me. So I'd rather have that 12 from quints than have the lower scaling ones from quints, And since I only needed 6%, because like I said, I want to start the game with 10% CDR, I don't need that extra 1% that I would get from this last glyph. So I swapped in a scaling glyph of magic resist. That brings up the total amount of MR that I get from this page to 14.7. I mean, I prefer having scaling magic resist in the jungle, but for this page and for some other pages, it's just not really an attractive option if I'm using a different setup that's, I guess, not normal. But yeah, if I had this last percent to get 7% CDR, I would have 11% total. That bringing me to, if I was to itemize for CDR, let's say I pick up a Solari, I pick up a Frozen Heart. In that case, then I could possibly, get 40% CDR, and my last glyph would be 1% wasted. Because remember that every single CDR item in the game will give CDR in a what is the word I'm looking for? A multiple of 5. So you're either getting 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. You're never going to get 1% CDR from an item. So that 1%, if you get 40%, this is very confusing. I'm sorry, but you don't want 11% CDR from this page, because if you do buy 30%, you're going to have that 1% that is wasted from your glyphs, which is why I use this as a scaling magic resist. That was a mouthful. Sorry about that. And those are all my jungle room pages. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my masteries. I have a couple of different pages that I run for my masteries. They're all pretty scattered, so I'm going to have to go through them very sparingly. This is my Bruiser Jungle page. I run this on champions like Xin Zhao, Jarvan, Nocturne, etc. When I need armor, or when I need resists, but I still want armor penetration. Attack speed, Butcher are self-explanatory, so is the armor penetration. What I want to talk about is what to take in the defense tree, and this is regardless of what you're running for your other 9 points. If you're putting 21 in defense, I highly recommend considering some of these. You obviously want this. Summoner's Resolve you must always get if you jungle because it grants you bonus gold when you use Smite. Durability is another one I highly recommend because it's giving you 100 free health for 4 points. Rough Skin, I absolutely stress that you must get this as a jungler. You're reducing damage flat that you're taking from monsters. Hardiness, again, staple. You cannot afford to give up Summoner's Resolve, Hardiness, and Tough Skin. Those are your jungle staples. The rest is up to you. You can get this, you can ditch it, get Perseverance if you want, you can get Resistance if you want. I personally don't take Magic Resist. I sometimes take Bladed Armor, but a lot of times I will ignore Bladed Armor because I don't find it a necessity. Because Bladed Armor is useless outside of the jungle, and it's useless outside of farming. And have you ever been in a situation where you get a buff, to within maybe 2 auto attacks, and your mid lane comes, and boom, you Bladed Armor, steal it. I really don't like that. But like I said, I run it sometimes, and sometimes I don't. I don't find it a necessity, and it won't hurt your speed. If it does, it's only hurting your speed by a few seconds tops. Safeguard is a staple I consider if you like to gank aggressively. Now, one mechanic a lot of people don't understand with Safeguard is that, look, the damage you take from turrets is reduced by 5%. But if you look at turrets themselves, when a turret auto-attacks you and locks onto you, it does a percentage of damage, right? The second time consecutively that it hits you, that damage increases. And if you're still being hit, in the same rotation, each shot will progressively get larger and larger and do more and more damage. That's why this 1 point gets more valuable. So let's say the first shot does 100% damage. The second shot does 110%. The third shot 120%. That's how towers work, alright? And that's why this mastery gets better the more you're getting hit, and that's why it's really good for tower dives. Veteran Scars, if you're taking this, take this. I take Relentless because I don't enjoy being slowed, I'm sorry. But the other option here would be Unyielding. If you're planning on getting I guess you're not planning on getting auto attack, but if you're taking damage from auto attacks, if you have to dive an enemy AD carry, if you're in lane, this is a really, really good lane tool. A trick with this is take Unyielding the next time you play against a Gangplank. I believe Gangplank's passive is 7 damage per second is the dot. This actually reduces that by 2 if you get both points. So it reduces Gangplank's passive, which is really a really neat thing. And if you're getting Unyielding, get Block, because Block is a very good anti-AD carry mastery. Tenacious I grab because I've been running less and less Mercury's Treads over the course of Season 3. I find Ninja Tabi and other boots to be more effective for what I want to accomplish. So Tenacious is definitely very good. I believe that the 15% is more than enough. 35% from boots is fine, this is really all you're going to need, though. Juggernaut is another iffy one. You can grab it if you'd like, but please notice that the first point is more valuable than the last two, because if you notice from rank 1 to rank 2, it's not going up by 1.5% every rank. It goes 1.5 to 2.75, I believe, to 4%, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, it's definitely good on junglers that would stack health, but since I'm playing this page for someone like Xin Zhao or Jarvan, I'm going more for that, that tanky offensive build. I'm not necessarily stacking health. And if you ever have a choice between Legendary Armor and Defender, always take a point in Defender and don't put 3 in Legendary Armor, because Legendary Armor requires a ridiculous amount of resist to make it worth it. Think about it this way. With just 1 point, you need 100 magic resist and 100 armor to get just 2 magic resist and 2 armor out of this mastery. Whereas defender, if you're standing next to two enemy champions, you're already getting 2 armor and 2 magic resist. It's a 1 point wonder is what they would call this. Good hands, I could see, if you're working with maybe a newer jungler, if you're unsure of what you need to be doing, if you have a feeling that you might need to dive, if you might die a lot, grab good hands. I mean, it's definitely not bad for 1 point, but as you play more, I guess, smarter and you get better with the champions you're playing with, you're not going to need this because you're going to know exactly what you need to do, how you're going to do it, and what your outcomes are. So, I mean, it's not a bad point, but you can definitely invest it into something else. Reinforced armor. I used to advocate taking reinforced armor, but the popular AD carry builds nowadays they emphasize getting a Blade of the Ruined King or maybe an early Phantom Dancer, an early Bloodthirster, that sort of thing. So I've dropped this a lot because not many, I would say maybe a quarter of people now build, crit from Infinity Edge now. So Infinity Edge is now their 4th, 5th, 6th item, whereas in the past it used to be the go-to big item. Since Infinity Edge is no longer as prevalent, I don't take reinforced armor. And of course, if you're going this deep into the defense tree, take Honor Guard. There's no excuse not to take it. It's really good. Some other pages I've got. My Maokai page, I run 9 here. This is pretty standard. I run Runic Affinity, Expanded Mind, and Meditation. I do not take Wanderer because I have movement speed quints. And Scout, I find it to be useless. Mastermind is eh. I know when my flash is going to be up. I don't need my flash up, 10% sooner. I'm fine with this. This is fine enough for me. 15 seconds. 1 point wonder right there. And of course, improved recall. If you're going anything in utility, take improved recall. That 1 second can make a huge difference to whether or not you get caught, whether or not you get harassed out of your teleport, whatever. It's really good for a point. Cho Jungle. This is the page I use on Chogath. You can see I take 3 in Juggernaut. I go all the way to block. I put a lot of points into defense because I don't feel most of this is necessary. Chogath is very buff independent. He's not necessarily mana hungry due to his passive, and he's not going to need the damage due to his ultimate, which is why I grab 5 points here and 25 in defense. Now remember, that rune page that I showed you gives 6% CDR, and I'm getting 4% here, so I'm starting with 10%, which is extremely good. And I believe this is my Trundle page. It's slightly different. I take the CDR and I take the AD per level. I think someone just came in my house. I'm sorry, but yeah. My Shyvana jungle, when I'm feeling really aggressive, I'll usually stick to my Bruiser jungle page, but if I'm feeling I can dominate my enemy opponent in the jungle, I'll grab both penetrations. I'll grab weapon expertise and I'll grab arcane knowledge because Shyvana is a really good mixed damage champion. Diana jungle, I run 13-17. This is another, all-in type of page where I feel like I need to be out there doing damage, invading, aggressively ganking. I would suggest that if you go this far with Diana, you absolutely have to pick up Spell Sword. It's really good for what it does, especially if you're building a Nashor's Tooth or Spirit of the Wraith, Spectral Wraith. I have a duplicate Shyvana page. This is my Zed jungle page. I go full offense with 9 in defense for the increased smite and safeguard. Zed doesn't need any defenses. He doesn't need any of this utility. You need to go 21 offense at least. And my Nasus page, well, it's just what I'm experimenting with. Taking Summoner's Wrath for Ghost. Take a little bit of things in here. Mostly block because I'm going to be getting auto attacked a lot. And then Runic Affinity and mana regen. And my mastery explanations are a bit rough, but I mean, 9 in utility is really easy to understand. Defense is more where I felt I had to do explaining. I think I covered most stuff. And offense, you don't need to carry from the jungle. You just need to be able to convert kills. You need to be able to get objectives. And I feel that if you're not tanky enough for your team, that can hinder you because the jungle role I feel determines the feel of the team, determines what role needs to be filled. You can have 4 damage dealers, including, an unconventional support bot lane, but your jungler is the heart of the team. He's the one that needs to be building tank. He's the one that, on occasion, might need to be building damage. All right, your top laner might go something damage, so then you have to go tank. Your top laner might go tank, you might need to go damage, and vice versa, you know? The jungler is really the center of the team. You are a carrier, you're the ganker, you keep a watch on the lanes, which is why I feel it's more beneficial to be defensive most of the time than to be offensive, because the better offensive champions in this game come from a lane, from a solo lane. They perform the best, not from the jungle. So in most situations, you're better off investing more into the defense tree than into any other tree.